You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma-breaking, humor-filling, life hacks, and motivational tips for all the medically adultish people in life. I'm Dominique Vale, host of the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, our chat show, and the founder of InvisiYouth Charity. And I'm excited because today is episode 41 and the first episode of season 4, which is our monthly chat show with our nonprofit's audio programming, as you guys know. And we got a few podcasting upgrades. If you're listening, I do have a lovely new mic, so hopefully my voice is a lot more clear than the past few seasons for all of you. We are taking our favorite segments and giving them some fun new twists on our takes. And if you watch on our YouTube channel for the visual show, which I highly recommend as well, I have a lovely new set from a different part of my home. So you will be getting a new visual. And there's also some fun balloons behind me, guys. We're not celebrating season 4. This is recycled from my previous birthday, but I figured let's just celebrate because this is a fun episode that I'm really excited about for all of you guys to get to listen to. We're starting season 4 with a really exciting episode. As you know, we love to bring on our special guest experts and talk about topics we hear about from you guys all of the time. And so today we're talking about self-care. And I know nowadays that feels like sometimes it can feel like a buzzword, or it feels like something you see on social media so often all the time. So our special guest we've brought on has really created a brand that is authentic for self-care practices that you can really adapt and make personalized for yourself, which is something that we really love, obviously working with young adults with chronic illness and disability, that anything we can adapt and make accessible, we really love. And when you have health issues, self-care actually becomes a really big portion of making your medical life more functional for you. So it actually becomes part of what we will always practice at InvisiYouth too. So I'm really excited to introduce everybody to the creator of the platforms Bun Undone and Self-Care Society, Morgan Raphael. She is based in Chicago, so a fellow American with me, and has her background in public relations and advertising, and uses her enthusiasm for wellness and fitness to create Bun Undone, which really helps to instill confidence for anyone in their individual wellness journey. I love the tagline of really letting the bun go undone, which I love so much because it shows about authentically enjoying life and finding that balance for yourself. Morgan's work with her platform really allows for positive resources to become available, from healthy meal ideas, clean beauty, wellness, journaling, and practical self-care through her brand Self-Care Society workbooks and ebooks, and soon to be app as well. So self-care can be maintainable, enjoyable, and authentic to everyone. So that's something of personalization, which is key for Morgan with Bun Undone. And I know it is key for us with adaptive self-care. So I'm excited to have Morgan joining us for the first episode of season 4. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dominique. I'm so honored and excited to be here. And thank you so much for that beautiful introduction too. And happy birthday.
Thank you. Yes. I know, like I said, I'm really excited to have a whole episode talking about self-care. I think it's, like I said, it's one of those topics that people just assume they can just add into life and not really delve into the different ways they can adapt it for themselves. So I'm excited to get to bring on somebody who really honed this in as a profession for themselves and have a whole episode really getting to fuel the topic with everyone. So I'm excited to dive right in with you on our first segment. So before we do that, though, I'm just going to remind everybody that as a nonprofit, with this being our audio programming, we always love to have more new subscribers and new listeners and viewers. So I always encourage everyone to, if you can, subscribe and hit that like button, 5 stars, reviews, anything you can. I'll give a couple seconds of some dead pause so you guys can click that button while we're waiting. All right, we did it. Now we're good. Hopefully you clicked that now. And now that we did that, we're going to jump into our first segment with Morgan, Break That Glass Ceiling.
Break that glass ceiling. Break that glass ceiling.
you guys know and have been listening, you know Break That Glass Ceiling is my personal favorite segment of the podcast series because we love to talk about topics that are a little under discussed in times and have misconceptions, especially in the chronic illness and disability community. So we are excited to bring this one of what can really bring self-care in an authentic way, especially in the virtual world as well, and make it personalized for everyone. And now that we have Morgan with us today, that's going to be our biggest chat for the whole episode. So I know something we'll always say with InvisiYouth is a lot of times what we're sharing feels like such common sense that people have a hard time then actually applying it into their daily life. And I feel like with self-care, that seems like such a common sense thing to add into your daily routine, but then very few people actually put in the steps to actually apply and add self-care for themselves. So for you, what kind of is that distinction between seeing self-care tools or learning about it and then actually applying them?
So for me, self-care, I feel like on social media and some like in the media in general, it's kind of gained this stigma of being these like really bougie and unattainable things. Like, yes, the spa days and massages, those are all great, but that's really not, in my opinion, the self-care that makes the biggest deep internal difference. And the thing that you can apply and kind of build those habits of that will actually make you feel better day to day. So I always try to say it's called self-care for a reason. It's all about finding what works for you and is best for you as an individual to just feel like your best self internally, like with your mental health, with your physical being, if possible, and really kind of just tie and combine that holistic practice for you. And it doesn't matter what it looks like for anyone else. And it's really taking those baby steps, maybe trying a few different things and then checking in with yourself. So I always say the best place to start is even to just wake up in the morning, try to stay disconnected, not grab your phone right away. Take those few minutes to check in with yourself before you check in with anyone else, whether that's scrolling, checking emails, calling someone, and just ask, how am I feeling today? And when you ask how you're feeling today, and whatever comes up, just allowing whatever to come up, and then kind of being like, well, what can I take today? Like, what do I need? What would help me feel better? What would help me make the most of this day? And really just being honest with yourself and embracing however you feel. I think so much about self-care is that authentic honesty with yourself and what you need.
Yeah, no, I really love that because it is kind of taking your own personal thoughts and then turning them into action. And if you just keep them to yourself and not actually applying them, it just becomes these two sort of stagnant things that don't end up building any momentum. And that kind of keeps you kind of trapped in your own mind because you're trying to, like you said, waking up and immediately connecting with other people or connecting virtually, and you're not connecting with yourself. So that does kind of snowball throughout the rest of your day if you don't start off your day just doing something as simple as that.
Absolutely. And I notice a complete difference in my anxiety because I struggle with anxiety and just I feel completely different on the days that I take that time for myself. And I also try to break the stigma that not only does it have to it doesn't have to be expensive or aspirational, but it doesn't have to take long either. If you're a morning person, or maybe if you're not a morning person, but you're trying to become more of one, carving out even those 5 minutes for yourself to check in. And then from there, whether it's drinking your coffee, whether it's journaling, I love my ice roller, doing these simple little things that really do just help you feel better and feel more like yourself, I like to say, are huge game changers. And they really oftentimes it is these little things. So through what I promote and through my community, I really share all different types of self-care to help individuals find what works for them and helps them feel their best. And then adding it to their routine once they recognize how much better it does feel. So really just kind of helping you take those baby steps to find what works for you in regards to self-care and allowing yourself that time to just be and to rest and to give back to yourself in the same way you always give to others. And by giving back to yourself in those little ways, you really do start to build not only your self-care practice, but also really deepen that self-love and that self-acceptance, which really is the key to self-love, in my opinion. So they really all do go hand in hand, and they do sound like these really lofty, big ideas, self-love has to be this overnight shift that all of a sudden I love myself and I know my self-worth. And it's none of these journeys are linear. Healing is not linear. Figuring out what works for you and self-care is not linear. Self-love is not a black or white thing. It is truly just every day giving back to yourself, embracing yourself, accepting yourself, showing yourself that kindness and compassion in that same way you give to others.
No, absolutely. I really agree with that it really is, like you said, finding the things that you enjoy individually and then finding the ways to actually apply it. And like you said, 5 minutes really does make a difference because it just kind of boosts your mood at different points in the day. And that really can kind of sustain itself moving forward when you're having kind of a rough spot. And kind of going off of that, the one thing I wanted to ask is, I know for you and for a lot of people that we work with from the virtual space, what they do virtually on social media is a portion of their work. Like for yourself, your brand talks about self-care and you're educating on that and building a community, but then you're also trying to practice it for yourself. And so that sometimes it can feel like that line will blur between the two of what you need to do professionally, but then what you want to do for yourself. So what would you say for people when they have those low days and they're not feeling at their best, but they know professionally they still have to go online and check in and do their work? So where do you what have been things that have been beneficial for you when you're not feeling at your best, but you still have to kind of show up in the work sense?
So I do think that something that I've had to learn a lot too in the last year is that it's okay to ask for help and to lean on people for support, especially like so many people, so many women in my community are like such empaths and so selfless and give to so many. And it's okay to also lean and like be honest and give that to yourself. And so much of what I share are often things that I need to hear. So it really, obviously, if you have work, you have to work, but also if you have a break in the day, actually spending time during that break, like offline, maybe you're doing some sort of mindfulness practice, which can be like cooking and like doing something that's enjoyable for you, or listening to music, or going on a walk, or calling someone and just like venting about your feelings, but allowing yourself to like take that break for you. If you're having one of those days and surrounding that space with, whether that's more of like kind of hermit mode, introverted mode, which I oftentimes need too, or maybe it's like, especially as an extrovert, if you're like energy from really positive people in my life and my support system is going to give me that boost that I need right now. Learning to take that and just giving back to yourself in those little ways, whether that's middle of the day or whatever you need. And honestly, being like open about it with your community or your colleagues or your coworkers or your friends and family, and just being like, I am not feeling well today. Like, people want to support you if you share it. And I think it also, especially in the content space, makes it a lot more relatable and authentic. Like, I am someone that tries to always share positivity, but I'm never trying to share it in a way that's not real. And that's why so much of like I'll have therapy sessions and be like, I really felt through a lot today. And like, I want to share those things because I want us to normalize having those conversations and recognizing that things do not have to be perfect to be impactful on social media, especially. And I know so much of what we see is like, you know, the aesthetic reels and like the spa treatments and just like the like things just looking perfect. And I want to, that's why like my whole brand is like Bun Undone, embracing your imperfections, letting your bun loose, because I really do want to just help others give themselves permission to not be perfect. And I'm a Virgo, I'm a perfectionist, so this is something I'm constantly learning, but it is so important to, like, when you check in with yourself, especially in the morning, if you're doing that check-in practice and you're like, ooh, today I'm just like not feeling it. I think that it's so much better to just be open and share that if you can, and like allow others to hold kind of that space for you than to try to push through and bottle that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's acknowledging that at times you have to go through the motions of work, that it doesn't have to it's not a setback if you have a day or two in a work week where you're just not feeling it, where I think a lot of people will feel, oh, well, I'm now having to be a bit performative because I have to be on for work, but that's not truly how I feel. And also, well, if you're acknowledging it for yourself, that's truly the best thing you can do, is you're acknowledging that that's just not where you're at, but you know you need to provide for your coworkers, or in a space where you are your own brand and you're sharing portions of your work, you have to be able to still engage. So knowing that kind of authentic, like you said, check in for yourself. And also someone had always given me a good tip of knowing that when you do work on the virtual space, especially social media, is sometimes if you're feeling those lulls, you can either mention that through your own, like you said, brand, so your community is aware of it, but then also kind of post delayed to what's happening in your life. My one friend always said, like, well, from a safety perspective, always will, if she's traveling, she would always post delayed of when she was traveling, but she always said, no, I need, it was better for me mentally and just for my own self-worth of feeling like when I had those bad days, I wasn't posting during them. And then I was able to kind of turn it around, and I was able to reflect more and figure out what I wanted to share of those moments. So having that was a good one.
I completely agree with that. And like, we all go in waves. It's like riding the wave and like acknowledging how normal that is. But I am the exact same way. If I'm going through something, I'll try to like kind of take a step back, maybe even post less, or give myself permission to take time offline. Like, disconnecting and taking a break is like, people support that wholeheartedly. And it really does allow you to just like feel through what you're going through and process it, and then take what you learned from the experience after you've worked through it. So a lot of times what I share, and even like the program I built and everything, is from my own experience after I had the time to process it, to then share like, this is what worked for me, and really give the advice that I need to hear and the reminders that I need to hear. So that's why so many of my posts are like daily reminder, like all of these things that I'm like, I needed to remind myself of this today, or like last week when I went through this, and having that conversation, normalizing those conversations. And another piece of advice that I got recently that I really liked, that's kind of similar, is when you're having like these lulls or these low moments, like, and you're really focusing in on those and like judging yourself for those, try to like zoom out in the big picture, like all of the amazing things that like are going on and that you are doing, and like try like, and just allow that to be another way to accept that and be a little bit more kind and gentle with yourself and compassionate with yourself. But yeah, definitely just giving yourself permission to just be and take a step back if needed. And like, you can be someone that's really engaged in a community or in a big workspace and still give yourself that time to process. Like, I am an extrovert, but I need time to hermit in order to process. So it's like knowing what you need and then giving yourself permission to take that without judgment. And then you can come around, share what you've been through. And even like doing, I know we talked about this before, doing self-care just for you. You don't have to post it as like that, like kind of like performative way. But me taking time offline, going on a walk, like I tend to gain a lot of like clarity on walks and things like that, and not posting that I'm on my walk, but afterwards being like, this is like what came to me and really helped me while I was away, and like sharing messages like that where you actually took what you need and gained kind of like advice and awareness, and just like share something shareable from it, is like the most authentic way you can share it and help others not feel alone. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I love the extrovert that likes to be a hermit occasionally that should be another tagline for yourself as well. I love that. And I love what a big thing for you, and then also that we really love, is sort of maintaining authenticity when it comes to self-care and adding it into your routine. So kind of to end this segment, I wanted to know, how could people sort of maintain authentic self-care and actually sustaining it beyond the New Year's resolution, the first 3 months of the year kind of a feeling? What are things that are kind of tangible things you have in your community that have them actually sustaining that self-care for themselves more than a short period of time?
So I can kind of walk through what my like 5-week program looks like, because it really helps kind of explain all the different forms of self-care we walk through. So it starts with mindfulness, which is really like anything that allows you to focus on what's present and what's in front of you. So that's why I mentioned cooking before. It's like, cooking doesn't have to be a chore. It can be something that you're following a new recipe and it's fun. And you're like playing music and like just really like focusing on what you're preparing. It can be meditation. It can be breath work. It could be reading. It could be making playlists. Journaling is huge in our community, as you know. And then even like the morning check-in, and those are just mentioning a few. Then the second week is environment week. So that is anything that's around you, any space you kind of live, work, and play in. So that could also be digital space. So this is the week that you declutter, you organize, you unsubscribe, you block, you mute, you do whatever you need to do, whoever's not serving you on your social media feed. Like, give yourself permission to set those boundaries. But it's also like lighting candles and getting cozy, and maybe even like getting outdoors, like kind of changing your environment. Week 3 is all about connections. So it's really about especially focusing on like gratitude for those in your life and acknowledging who is giving you like that positive energy. And like, and this is something in my adult life I've learned so much, is like who do you really feel like you're most self around, and who really like helps you feel like your best self and feel supported. So it's really all about acknowledging those relationships this week. And like big on our virtual community, we always like connect a lot on this week. Calling people, paying it forward and saying, you know, thank you, like sending that email and just letting someone know they're your expander, just really like those like extra little things to like increase those connections. Fourth week is release week. And it's really about any sort of movement, rest, recovery that allows you to like move through your emotions of what you're feeling. So really like that, like release of letting go. It's no longer serving you. I didn't want to do the like classic, like so many, like obviously working out, movement is a form of self-care, but it's not about like how much you burn or like, you know, how much you sweat. It's really like, how do you feel when you do these things for yourself? And also acknowledging that recovery and rest and like just taking care of your body is the most important part of that, whatever that looks like for you. And then the last week is self-love week, which is really the culmination of everything. And it's really the positive affirmations, the positive self-talk in the mirror, writing yourself a love letter. It can be those fun like baths and like little pampering things, but it's really about celebrating yourself. So those are the 5 weeks through the guide, and each week it's really like adding those things onto like to your routine, and then just seeing what kind of sticks and what like gets taken away. And I like that it's, you know, 5 weeks because within the community we're doing it together, but then afterwards people really obviously continue it on and continue to do whatever works for them. And that might be nothing that's in, you know, connection week or release week or whatever. It could be like whatever is just naturally like coming to you. But typically, obviously, you find that everyone has their own things within those weeks that they were already doing or that they love to do that they maybe didn't define as self-care before. And I think that that's the biggest difference. Like I was saying, like cooking can feel like a chore, but if you kind of like romanticize it and you're like, no, this feels like good for me, I'm actually not worrying about what I was stressed about and feeling overwhelmed anymore, like then that's a form of self-care for you. So really like allowing yourself to do those things and not view them as a chore and something you have to do, but something that you're just called and want to do. And then what we do in my journal is like one of the things at the top is like today's self-care. So it's like writing down those little things to really give credit to the little things that you're doing that are helping you feel like your best self. So there's like several lines on here, but it could be like slept in a little bit later, slept with my phone in the other room, called my mom, FaceTimed a friend, like stretched, did my hair and makeup. Like it could be like all these little simple things, like open the window in my apartment to let fresh air in, and allowing those to really like defining those things you do in your life that make you feel good as self-care and acknowledging them and celebrating them. And then you always have this kind of like to look back to. And the journal also has the how I feel today, setting intentions, gratitude, a mantra, and then a specific prompt. There's like 86, I believe, prompts in this that are repeated, and you can kind of like look back and celebrate your growth through. But it really is just, I mean, even if you have the journal and doing this as your daily self-care, that's amazing. Like that's incredible. So it's really like knowing that whatever you are doing is enough, and whatever helps you feel like your best self is enough. And that is, like I said, why it's self-care. And just through my community, it's the idea of it being the individual practice in the self, but with the support of like-minded individuals who are going through similar things can really be there for you. And it's really like open and safe and vulnerable community that has really just allowed so much room for everyone to like grow and just like have that space to give themselves permission to like just be and to release anything. And like we all, you know, hold that space for each other. So it's really special. But I would just say that it's trying these new little things, acknowledging that those little things can be the most impactful self-care for you. And then whatever is what you're called to do kind of just naturally becomes part of your routine. So it might even be that you used to meditate in the morning, and then you realize in the middle of the day it serves you more, and like switching that, and then just like that becomes kind of a part of your like lunch break day to day. So it's allowing yourself kind of to add in these little things, like taking the few minutes for yourself, which is honestly hard to do. Like it's so easy for us to wake up and immediately start work or start doing something that's, you know, giving us stress. So I think that it's really just trying to like, this kind of gives yourself the ability to form those habits once you try these things and actually like see how it makes a difference for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love how you mentioned even with your 5 weeks that people will be able to finish through those. And then certain weeks are more impactful for other people. And that's what resonates with them the most. And that, like you said, it's really trial and error. And that's what's authentic is also realizing that you might try something, and we'll always say, I always will, if you're going to pick something like meditation or a fitness activity or doing journaling, give it the 30-day college try. Everybody, like, give it the 10 times, because if you try it once, most people, I commend the people who do meditation the first time and go, wow, that was phenomenal. Most people do it the first time and go, I have no idea how to make this work. I have no idea how to master this skill. You have to, yep, Morgan and I are like, yep, we're one of those. But you have to like work at it to actually figure out if it's something that will add benefit to your day to day. And so giving it that 30-day trial, that 8 or 9 time test, and being able to check it off going, no, I don't think this is really going to work for me. It really will be able to find what really balances for you. And then I know a big tip for us in the chronic illness space is because you have to schedule so much with health appointments and how you're feeling through flare-ups, is I'll always make sure that I will add monthly reminders of things just to remind myself that are a little more self-care related, as monthly reminders on my Google app on my phone, just so they're kind of like little goodies to pop up. So if I did kind of fall behind or falter on things during the month, I don't get so much upset that I haven't, but it's just sort of a re-jerk reminder to me going, oh, right, I really should be putting that in more. God, I've been so stressed. I probably should be doing this a bit more. And so adding that reminder for yourself, so it's already kind of auto set into your schedule, your calendar, and you're able to then kind of remind yourself on that monthly basis to check in, really kind of does, like you said, it is that triggering kind of point of going, okay, maybe I need to add something else, or, oh, I'm doing pretty good, kind of as a reminder for you of what will work really well in your toolkit, if you will, which is sort of my phenomenal segue into our next segment. Obviously, listening to Morgan, you guys know that she has so many different ideas and tools and practices that you can use as self-care. So naturally, we're going to build a toolkit with Morgan for all of you guys and all the different types of self-care that's available. So get your notepads out or your notes apps out. It is What's in Your Toolkit.
What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit?
With What's in Your Toolkit, Morgan and I are going to build out some of the different self-care tips and tricks and different ideas for you guys of all different types of people in self-care, because I know, like Morgan said, sometimes through virtual and social media, it can seem like a very, very specific lane, like a little bougie of what it looks like, but there's so many types of self-care practices you can add in for different things or different needs you have. So one of the ones I wanted to ask was, so if somebody's coming in that you would say is a bit more of an extrovert, and for them, self-care probably wouldn't be a very individual or an alone experience, that it seems more like a social experience for self-care, what are some quick things you would suggest to them to kind of implement into their life?
I would say they could do, like go to like the virtual workshops as part of the community. Obviously like FaceTiming friends, doing like cooking classes, workout classes, whether that's virtual or in person if it's safe. Really like just getting that energy of other people and doing it and like celebrating with that other person along the way. And it can even be, like I said, it could be virtual, it can be in person, but having that community weaved into your self-care. Trying to think of some other fun ones. I mean, it could be like the like wine nights and like you curl up with like Netflix, and it could still be that like cozy night, but like with a friend over, and really just like setting aside that time with someone to really enjoy the benefits of it together.
Yeah, like you said, setting it aside, I think is really key because it's like a goal to then look forward to, and it like adds kind of like that anticipation and excitement to it. We'll always say, hey, if you have a group on, add that in so you can find the activities or what's available in your area, especially with COVID permitting and what precautions for everybody is so different. You want to be able, especially on our community, mindful of that, but then also really to figure out being in sort of outdoor spaces is really wonderful for a lot of people, of being just around other people. We'll always say if you can do work in a coffee shop setting,
Yes.
if you're like me, you'll put the coffee shop YouTube video on in the background because you work from home.
I've never done that, but I need to, because I was just having this conversation. I feel so much more stimulated when I work, and there's like that like motivation and energy of other people like hustling and bustling, and I like live alone, I work alone, I work for myself, so I'm missing that right now. So that's a great find that YouTube video, but that's a great piece of advice as well. But another one that just popped in my head too is like a book club. So not just like reading on your own as a form of mindfulness and self-care, but doing it with like a book club and a group. And there's so many people looking for groups like this. So it's really finding virtual communities that fit with you and are like-minded to you, and you feel kind of at home in like a little space in the internet, and really like leaning into that. And I know that that's something I've like obviously been trying to build and support through Self-Care Society as well.
Yeah. What about people on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum that want to do more personal self-reflection, that they feel like they're a bit more at a crossroads and this is sort of their more of a mental wellness? What are kind of practices that you suggest to them?
I say do not disturb on your phone is huge, so that you have uninterrupted me time. I think that figuring out ways to do that is most important. I also have screen time on my phone. So like at 10:30 p.m., I think it like turns off, plug my phone in the other room, just really giving yourself that space from like other people being able to connect with you, so that you can connect back to yourself, like really recharge your batteries. As your phone's charging, like you're recharging too. But also within that time, doing things like, instead of being online and like, or like on your computer in some capacity, reading, doing like it could be still, I mean, watching a movie and like doing Netflix and things like that, just like on your own, but really spending time, like listening to a podcast, listening to music, making a playlist, going on a walk by yourself, cooking, journaling. Like I like pulling tarot cards and doing like spiritual things. And like it can also be like journaling, like brain dump journaling. It could be, just these things that you set aside for yourself. And you can also like schedule in this time for yourself. So like adding like, on your calendar, if you have a free spot, like go on a walk, or like set time to like do this for yourself, and really having that like moment. So morning and night, obviously remaining disconnected, but also just like giving yourself, if needed, and if you're someone that wants like that midday break and that midday boost, and you have that ability, giving like actually scheduling that for yourself. Because obviously in the extrovert group setting, you like have that kind of accountability with partners and people you're doing it with. So this is like your way to hold yourself accountable to like actually put yourself on your to-do list and schedule that time for yourself, because you deserve it and it will help you. I always say, I mean, it's the whole concept of you can't pour from an empty cup, but if you give yourself just those couple of minutes, it helps you show up even better to those like everyone else in your life, so that you can give to them, you can put more energy into work, however it may be. So allowing yourself that time to do those things, and then from that free time doing like all of the things that I've kind of listed before, whatever does feel best for you.
Yeah, and I like you said, it kind of holds yourself accountable because you are doing a lot of the personal work on your own. So being able to, I know on our end, from working from home or working with young people that are sort of have to be at home for being immune suppressed or being homebound at different points for health reasons, that having your work, like you said, when it comes to work play, where you sleep versus where you work, finding the divides of physically, if you still, I know a lot of people that we work with, they work from their bedrooms, which is really is great, but I'll always make sure like change your outfit, like put on like put something separate on your bed. If you have work tables that you sit on your bed and it's still, that's your space, put other things on your bed so it feels around you, and actually take the time to be like, in my schedule, there's 10 minutes in where I'm setting up my work area, and you can have your fun music on in the background or listening to something, and it becomes, like you said, it becomes less of a part of the daily task, and it becomes more of a fun sort of self experience for yourself to get you into the spirit of doing your work or doing different things. I know for health reasons, if I have to do PT at home, I'll listen to more like upbeat, like K-pop or something, because it's exhausting for me to have to do physical therapy. But at least if I'm listening to that, I'm like joking around with myself as I'm physically uncomfortable, but at least for me, I have like a more upbeat experience around me with music. So it provides sort of a release of fun in something that can be very stifling or uncomfortable. And obviously from like a mental wellness standpoint, like you said as well, when you had touched on with having anxiety, like mental wellness can even be like going to therapy, which people think is like a task, can actually be something, if you look at it from a lens of self-care, it can actually then feel different, which I think for on your end, it would feel different going actually or talking to a therapist or using a mental wellness app as well. It feels different when you put it in a different lens that it's work you're doing for yourself.
Absolutely. And therapy actually falls under like release week for the 5-week guide, for that exact reason, because it really is a safe space for you to show up and just release and feel held and feel supported. So I'm a huge mental health advocate. I started therapy last November. So it's been like a year and a few months that I've consistently been going. And it has just given me so many more tools. And it actually allows me a chance to like feel proud of myself. Like even like, obviously, things we're going through and things we're talking about can be really heavy, but because it's heavy and I'm working through them, it's like, there's a space to be proud of like all that you're, that you're doing this for yourself and that you're putting in this self-work that is challenging. It is hard. So I am a huge mental health advocate, and definitely therapy is 100% a form of self-care. And I know that it can feel like it like you said, it can feel like more of like a work thing and like a scheduled appointment. But if you allow yourself to just be, and finding obviously the right therapist makes a huge difference, where you do feel that support and that safeness to just be yourself and be open. And then once you do and you show up for yourself, like showing up for yourself is what self-care is. So I completely agree. And I also like going back to your previous comment to 100% making little changes in whatever space you have to kind of separate that work-life play balance, especially when we all had to work from home, is huge. And maybe that's sitting at, like, you're working from the same table all day as well, but at night you you light a candle and you like have like, set your dinner space a little bit nicer, where during the workday you have like all your organized like notes and everything cleaned up. So 100% agree on all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And even kind of one other thing on that too is, like you said, there's a big difference, especially from a virtual sense, of like what looks more indulgent self-care versus sort of like the quick version of it. So do you have things that you do in your daily life that if you had time, you'll set aside more in the indulgent version of a self-care activity versus something you'll add in that's 5 or 10 minutes in a daily or weekly routine for you?
Yeah. So a lot of the the daily, like the quick things that I like to do every single day are the, like ice rolling and journaling and like those little things, like having music on in the background. But the days that I want to be really indulgent, I'll like really write like manifestation lists or intention lists and like actually take more time like working through those things. It's, how we always, like, you joke about the like showers that are like the ones that are like 20 minutes where you dry brush and you like, shave and you have a bubble bath and like things like that. But sometimes I'll, like baths on Instagram or another thing that like people think you have to have like the whole like wooden thing and like the iPad with the movie and the glass of wine. And I'm like, I just lay in there with like Epsom salt, and if I want to elevate the experience, I'll add music and oils and turn off the lights and light a candle. But it still can be like a simple thing that doesn't have to be like, this super extravagant, like I used a $20 bath bomb in my bath and had an entire, read a book. Like, no, it really like, it could be a few minutes that you can still just like sit in stillness and relax and carve out that time for yourself. It's a lot less time. So little things like that. I also will say like, if you're scheduling appointments, obviously for whatever kind of like self-care treatments you have, obviously that's going to be a bougier experience, but at home you can do the face masks and really have fun with it. And you can make your own face masks, like using honey, and like I've done like lip scrubs with like brown sugar and honey and coconut oil, and like you could do those little things at home and like have fun kind of playing around. It kind of like lets your inner child out a little bit to like do things with your hands. So there's a lot of ways to like make those things at home, and it doesn't have to be like it could be just as fun and just as much of an experience, while also not costing money, not having to take a long time. So definitely wanted to throw those things out there as well.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned a lot of it isn't so much from a financial, it's a time thing, that the indulgence is time as well, that you can do it essentially for free at home, but it's the intentional setting aside of a longer period of time versus a shorter period of time is really what kind of will make something more indulgent. It doesn't have to look the way it does on social media. I don't even have a bathtub, so I get very envious of people who do have bathtubs, no matter what they look like. But it's true that at least if I'm in the shower, I have like lavender aromatherapy shower gel. So at least in my brain, I'm like, all right, this is sort of the experience because that scent, and then I'll have music. And so I'll turn the lights off because with neurological pain, light sensitivity. So I'll make sure like the hall lights are open, but the door is open. So it's like my version of mood lighting because I don't have mood lighting in my shower. So like you said, it's adapting to what you have available. But then when you set aside the time, you're kind of building up a level of excitement for it, where, like you said, the things that are quick things that are part of your morning routine or your night routine, they just kind of roll into parts of the daily routine that just sort of are something you can look forward to start your day or end your day, and kind of bookend it on good points.
You can also like combine things in one. So you can do like a meditation in the shower. I worked with
I do that too.
I worked with Skin Timid a couple of years ago, and they did a like shower meditation series. So they're literally on their YouTube channel, which I like shared them with my community, which was like the very beginning of when Self-Care Society began a couple of years ago. And it's like you can turn the lights off, and it's like a guided meditation in the shower to like almost give back to your body at the same time too, where it's like when you're rubbing the like soap on your body, like speak words of kindness to yourself, and like acknowledge like just bring kind of awareness back into it as well. And it really I think that's just an example of one, but there's so many things that you can do to kind of like combine two forms of self-care and one to like be more efficient with the time as well. And at the same time, it's elevating that single thing. So like elevating like your shower, like you were mentioning too.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really, I've been told to meditate in the shower. So I have learned that a couple of times as well, which was very weird. I went, am I going to fall asleep if I try to do this while I'm standing in here? So I was like, no, it's just like, I'm talking. So I'm going to be alert the entire time. I promise everyone, nobody's falling asleep. But yeah, no, that's a really good kind of ending point to go off of. And before we get into our intermission segment, which everybody loves, before we get there, I always like to thank everybody who's been listening or watching throughout the episode, because for listeners and viewers like you, we get to continue providing free programming and resources to young people with chronic illnesses and disabilities around the world, and providing that monthly so that they have the resources to be able to thrive and find success and joy in their daily life. So we always throw the donation link up. You'll see it on the screen. It's in the description notes as well. If you're able to help support our nonprofit in any way by subscribing or by donating or following us on social media, all of that really helps. Shopping at our InvisiYouth store, where we donate 100% of proceeds as well. All of those links are below, because all of that really does help us keep these lights on and keep these programs going as well. And so you guys all know we're in the middle of the show. We didn't change this part for season 4. We're still keeping our intermission segment. It's everyone's favorite. It's So That One Time.
So that one time.
All right, guys. So that one time is where our guests get to share a life story with us, and I get to sit back and relax in now this very comfortable chair that I have, and have Morgan tell us a story. So Morgan, you can take it away.
Okay, so I wanted to actually chat about like my breakup and kind of how it led to like everything that I do, and why what I do just kind of fell into place naturally. So I actually moved to Chicago, not really knowing anyone. My ex-boyfriend was the only person I knew, and I had moved here and really found myself here, like found my footing here, kind of like started to establish just like what I want to do in life. And we broke up, and it was just me basically feeling like it didn't make sense anymore. But the hardest part about the breakup was that I knew that once I left being with him, I had to really start over and kind of create my new life in Chicago. And obviously it was exciting to have this idea of my own apartment and my own space, but I was like, how do I give back to myself in ways that allows me to accept and love myself more on my own now that I'm going to be spending so much more time alone? How can I give back to myself in these little ways? So I moved into my studio. I got really excited building my own sanctuary for the first time, and just trying to make it feel like making your space feel like home, whatever that looks like for you, so that you feel safe and happy in your space. So that was one of the things I did. I started journaling every day. I started giving back to myself in little ways, like cooking. And I think that's when the ice roll came into my life. And I started pulling little oracle cards for myself and just trying these little things. And then that following September, I believe, which was 8 or 9 months later, I was like, I feel really proud of the growth that I just kind of had a moment that I was like, I'm really I feel like mentally I'm in a much better space, and how did I get here? What did I do? So that was when I was like, I want to take my experience and all of these little things I did and things I tried and put them in a program to help others, no matter what they're going through, kind of find and give back to themselves through self-care. So not just giving people ideas for self-care, but actually allowing self-care to be a gateway into just getting to know yourself better, so that you can then embrace yourself more and love yourself more. So that is how Self-Care Society was born. And then flash forward literally 2 years later to almost the dot of the breakup. I have a weird timing cycle in my life, I think. I was broken up with, and I was completely blindsided and heartbroken and devastated. And that was when I realized how much the tools that were kind of created were now there for me to come back to. And I gave myself permission to lean into my community more and ask for help more. And it really helped me heal in so many ways, and became almost I say, it was a breakup to break through, because once I allowed myself to really do even and a form of self-care that kind of was big for me then was showing up on social media and being creative and creating, and then being proud of myself. So it was almost giving myself permission to have two feelings at once, and be devastated and heartbroken and crying and being open about that, but also still doing things that felt good for me and having fun, and allowing the two to coexist. So I really no matter what you're going through, there's ways to kind of allow self-care to be a space to lean in, to let go of anything that's no longer serving you, whether that's imposter syndrome and self-doubt, or a relationship, and knowing that while it is self-care and these things, that you have the ability to lean on to other people and things as well. So it really has been just the most impactful part of my journey. And that's why it's I'm so passionate about sharing this with other people. And yeah, I just want to kind of share my story of how it all came. It's kind of funny that it came full circle in a way. But every time I'm learning more and hoping that those tools are more things that I can just lean into and help share with other people. And I said at the end of this breakup, I was like, well, first one led to Self-Care Society's first version. So I'm like, I know this is going to lead to something. Now I honestly am grateful for that breakup. It was not the right relationship for me at all. And I see that very clearly, but I also know that from that, I had obviously I've had my personal growth, but I want to use that to channel into something else that will allow for others' growth as well. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that story, and kind of how, it's now been almost a year since the breakup, and I just feel I'm now definitely in a very different place where I want to share my story for. And it's kind of similar to what we talked about before, where it's, taking that time for yourself to process, and then using your experience to share and hopefully encourage and empower others, that it does get better and you don't have to feel alone.
Yeah. And I love that you went from being the student of self-care to the teacher, then back to the student and back to the teacher again, which is really important for people to remember, that you can go and learn through an experience, but then also, and then be able to educate others or teach friends or family, even in your own inner circle, but you're able to always circle back and learn more or strengthen the tools that you have as well, which a lot of people, especially even a self-care space, might feel, okay, this is what works for me, and then just keep it moving forward. But like you, even in your end on work, it's just, there's the ability to know you can always add new things or even evolve the things that do work for you, so that it can always continue to be something that you're learning from, which will make you always feel a sense of pride that you're always learning something.
Right. And it's the whole concept of like change is inevitable. It's constant. And allowing and I didn't want, like, it made me feel like I could be a stronger storyteller for what I'm going through versus, maybe the opposite of like kind of going backwards. But it's this whole idea that no matter what journey you're on, it's not always going to be linear, and that is more than okay. And that makes you only more relatable to others that are going through same things or different things or similar things. Doesn't really matter. But that you don't, like, once again, it comes back to the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect to be impactful. Like wherever you are in your journey is exactly where you should be. You're showing up exactly how you're meant to. And wherever you are in your journey, like, you are going to inspire others just by sharing your story. So wanted to share mine in the hopes that that kind of encourages others to do the same and know that, like, wherever you are is enough, and you are enough. And you are worthy. So that's, yeah. I just wanted to...
Hey, breakups seem to be the fuel of your fire. So I mean, we don't want to sustain that mindset, but for the current moment, it worked well. We'll keep it in your 20s, and then we will release that for once we move past that. But and even going out of that, we're going to get into our next segment with Morgan, going through some health hack moments.
Health hack moments.
Health hack moments is really where we're going to talk about taking what seems more like the idea of self-care and then making it actual practical life hacks that you guys are able to instill into your day to day. So I know a big thing for us is really, I know what we'll always teach, especially for the chronic illness space when it comes to self-care, is the idea of passive self-care versus active self-care, because from a physical standpoint, there might be physical limitations to doing different things. So you might feel like you're being hindered of seeing on social media or on TikTok or Instagram what people are doing, as if you're looking up what sort of in the self-care hashtag and you're seeing what's popular, and you might then start to be like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do any of these things, or I don't know how to adapt them. So at InvisiYouth, we'll always say, well, there's active and passive self-care. So for being able to find some fun and releasing stress. So for you, do you have sort of distinctions when people come in and what works well for them that are more active-based sort of self-care that's more practical for them to do, versus things that you say, oh, you can kind of adapt these more mental-based kind of self-care tools for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, I mean, it doesn't have to be, a certain, like, it doesn't have to be physical to have the same effects. And I think that so many people just naturally are drawn to things that are more passive because they're not, it's that same concept of like allowing yourself to slow down and do these things for yourself. So I think that oftentimes what people need more of is this passive self-care. And I think that that is, the giving yourself more time in the morning, or allowing yourself to wake up slowly, wake up gently, doing, the mindfulness practice, whatever that looks like for you, spending time it's a lot of, and I think that obviously so much on social media are these like kind of physical things like we were talking about, but it's so much of self-care is internal and can't be seen. Like the growth that you're going through and the most impactful things are the things that you don't really see and you don't really maybe necessarily share. So it's like knowing that those are just as important, if not even more, and worth celebrating.
Yeah, I love that. And I know a big thing on my end that I'll always recommend from the passive side of when my health is a bit more limiting or if I'm having flare ups is a lot of times my mind will end up racing if I'm physically unable to. And I know even outside of a chronic illness space, for those of us who are in our community in the mental health space too, that can be a big worrying concern is just like that mind racing portion. And to try and fit in self care where your mind stops racing can be challenging. You kind of feel like you're always hitting walls or roadblocks. So one that kind of worked for me, which I know some of my teenage volunteers will laugh, is I do things that my brain is turned in a different direction, but I'm still relaxing. So I will watch like foreign teen dramas or foreign rom-coms so that I have to focus on reading subtitles. So I'm still being entertained, but I'm actually like intellectually listening and having to read something else. So my brain has to focus and fully digest what I'm paying attention to. And it's like funny teen dramas and K-dramas and like Spanish telenovelas, and like I'm fully embracing it, but it allows me to like have that disconnect. If I can feel that I'm just not going to be productive and I'm trying to work and I just keep spinning my wheels, it will be like, okay, I know I'm going to take that when I'm in that lunch break. I'm going to turn something on so my brain is just off and somewhere else. And usually that for me seemed to be like something I was distracting myself on, but something I've learned through adding kind of self-care for myself, or when we're teaching kind of more the passive self-care, is it's okay for when you say it's self-care, it's for yourself. So the idea of selfish not having a negative connotation is really critical, because I was like, no, that's me time that I need, because I'm not going to be able to do any of my work if my brain is still doing this. So, which I think for what you promote as well through yours is the embracing of not so much using the term selfish, but kind of embracing that this is for me. Like I need to do this and that's okay. And it's not taking away from doing things for or with other people, but you can't give anything else if you're not giving it back to yourself.
Exactly. And I love that you watch shows like that. You need to send me some, because I would love to do that. I'm someone that has subtitles on, even if I'm watching on my computer this close to me, because I'm a weirdo and I like love subtitles. But I feel that way about reading too, because I find that like, if you can find forms of kind of escapism for yourself, like just take a break from your own, like what's in your own internal world, and like have that kind of like fantasy fiction, like romantic, like I love like the almost like, I'm trying to like forget the genre of books, but like Colleen Hoover and like those like,
okay,
those types of books, like I absolutely love, because I love like reading about other characters and having that kind of time with them. And it's like similar to you and watching those shows. So I think that, yeah, that's kind of a good way. I suffer with monkey mind too. Like my mind is racing on it. And a lot of times like we have these tools and these practices in place, but sometimes it is taking more than just having that like conversation with yourself. And it's like doing these things that like you can shut it off a little bit.
Yeah, no, so hey, shout out to the Swoon Network on YouTube. You guys are great when it comes to subtitled teen dramas and Korean dramas. Very entertaining. I love it because I can get my 5-minute clips from you guys. So if you want to fully, endorse the podcast, I would thoroughly appreciate it, Swoon. But, I'll just shout you out now because I use you all the time for my own mental well-being. But even kind of going off of that, I know something that we'll promote in kind of the chronic illness space is journaling. So for your work to have self-care and journaling being such a big portion of what you've built with Self-Care Society, what for you is like the one reason, if someone said, what's the one reason why journaling is a portion of your self-care, what would be the main reason you would say it's the focal point?
Because it allows just a blank page for yourself to just process and just be and release. And it's kind of like a canvas in art. It's like you can fill it in whatever way you're called to and just like let things go. And obviously in the morning or at night, like whenever you kind of prefer, there's like kind of a space for both, but whenever you kind of prefer, if you were to use my journal, it's that disconnected quality time with yourself. And then there's also the ability to look through these pages, because it's a year's worth of pages, and then actually go back and celebrate yourself too. So it's like a place for you daily to come to, and then down the road, look back at and like celebrate yourself, and even celebrate yourself for just showing up on these pages. So Yeah, I would say, I mean, that was a few different reasons, but really just giving yourself that space, and, you know, and it's a space that you can make it look however you want for you, and answer these prompts however you want for you, and just like be honest with yourself. Like it's like a ritual in the sense that it's truly a practice just for you. So I think that I just love how it can be, you know, uniquely done and be a space to show up for yourself every single day. And I think that it is something that can feel intimidating. Like, where do I begin? What does journaling even like look like? Because there are days, like there's blank pages in the back of this, but I have another journal too, especially like before and after therapy, I'll like journal and everything. So brain dumping is huge. Writing intentions in those types of journals is huge too. But I always try to just tell people, like, even if it's that first thing in the morning, write down, how do I feel today? That's journaling. Like, that's a practice you're creating. And I kind of say, like, if you're like, I do daily gratitude, a daily intention. You could set a mantra for yourself and write down how you feel for the day. And that is like a huge, great way to give yourself like kind of that mindset in the morning and set the tone for the day. So there are little things like that you can do that just make it more approachable. And like, I'm all about making self-care just more accessible to anyone and whatever works for you. So those are just kind of like the prompts that I always share as a place to get started.
Yeah. And I love how you said, even you mentioning the different types that there are when it comes to journaling, especially in the chronic illness space. You're always encouraged to like express your feelings and the different worries and concerns you have about how other people are interacting with your chronic illness, or how you feel about health limitations or changes in diagnosis. So it's always that like need to express and divulge and understand to be able to then move forward and live and be successful in what your health is capable of and where that avenue of adapting is. But I like that you even mentioned like 4 different options, because when it comes to journaling, some people are intimidated by the blank page because they went, oh God, I don't know what my brain wants to write down. And then you stare at it, then you get frustrated, then you're like, shut the journal, put it away, and then you never go back to it. But then other ones have prompts, and that can, for some people, it takes out the guesswork, that at least something is there for me that is telling me what I have to write, or is prompting me to think of something or to read something and then write it, which kind of having that variety of being able to really kind of search for the journals. And like, even on your end, that there's so many different options. Even on when you even showed, if you were on YouTube, you would be able to see Morgan showed one of the pages of her workbook with her journal, but there's different visual prompts, and you're just seeing the writing in. And it's that level of showing that there's variety of what you can write down. You can even virtually, I've had a lot of our younger volunteers will say, I'll just voice note and just voice memo in a moment where I'm frustrated with people, or I'm feeling something, and they'll just voice memo. And whether they never look at their voice memo, it's just that release of thought, or that I'm going to sit in a moment for myself and just say something, which kind of really, it is for you, and the journal doesn't have to be shared with other people. I have a 5-year journal that has random prompts of the most ridiculous things of, oh, what was the first word you heard from a television today? And it's even that, which has nothing to do with my own well-being or my own individual journey, something like that. Just knowing I have that journal, it's in my drawer, and I get to do it every day. And it's something I'm doing for years, has been really nice and ironically cathartic, that now this year I've done all 5 years. Now this year I go to everyone, and every morning I read what I wrote for the 5 years. And so like, that's been like kind of fun for me, that you can tell some days I just mentally was checked out, where they would be like, is it the day glass half full or half empty? And one year I wrote, the glass isn't even on the table. And I was like, well, Dominique was having a great morning that when she wrote that. And I think that's really important too, is to be able, I can imagine there were pages in your journal where you were just not having a day, and you can just tell and look at that, and it can be a nice reflecting point for you, even on the bad days, to write things down as a form of self-care. People think it only has to be positive. So on your end, being able to write something even on more of the melancholy or negative side is even beneficial.
100%. And oftentimes, I mean, and it's it's making journaling like not have to be that like daunting blank page, but like the 5-minute practice instead. And you might even, the first thing you write might be anxious, and then actually doing the journaling could bring you a little bit more sense of calm. So but it really is a space to be honest with yourself. Like I've had many mornings where I'm like in a funk or sad or anxious or like just not feeling like meh, like I'll write like
3 letters.
it's like, it's all like, it's truly a space for you to show up however you are showing up. And like, it's you almost being your own little, like your own kind of cheerleader by having this page just for you. And then I love that you go back and look at it, because that's what it's for. It's like you're creating this almost like book of yourself. And it is in the moment. It's like in the present moment reflection, but then you can go back and also look at the self-reflection too, and see and be able to go back to these different points in your life that, yeah, you might remember what happened that day, but you don't remember how you were feeling. And it's really special to have that, and like have the days that you're, something big, like a big milestone in your life happens. And like, how are you feeling that morning before you knew you were, going to get that news or whatever it might be. And it's just really cool to have that for yourself, and know that it's you having your back, and it's like you always having that. And like, also I'm a big believer with all self-care that it's flow, not force. Like obviously, if you're not like compelled to journal a certain day, like you don't have to force it. Like you can, try something else that day and take space away to like actually process how you're feeling, and then brain dump it the next day, like whatever it might be. So that's also something I always like to say. Obviously I love journaling, but if that's not the self-care that's, for you, that's more than okay. And you don't have like within my community too, like it's not like a mandated thing. Like I want everyone to just find what works for them, and just be a part of it and show up however it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And even kind of going off of that, when you're, like you said, it's more flow, not force. And I think that's a big thing, especially for young adults and for young people in their 20s and 30s, is trying to, so much of your day is scheduled that to feel like you're scheduling self-care can feel like you're now making it a work project. So do you feel like, how is it very much just a mentally intentional thing that even if you're adding it into your schedule, it doesn't feel like work for you? You're just it's just, that's a placeholder as a reminder, and you're not using it as like, oh, okay, I have to now schedule me time in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, I have days like that I sleep in and I don't do all the usual self-care. And I'm like, well, maybe today my self-care was like kind of doing nothing. Like, you know what I mean? It's like giving yourself like compassion on all of those days too, and knowing that that is more than enough. So I would say that like my morning routine and stuff. And I like to say like Instagram and all these highlight reels make it how your morning routine should look. It's how it should feel, like how how your self-care routine should feel, not how it looks. So some days, I mean, for the most part, those like few things I kind of call like my non-negotiables are just part of my routine. I don't really have to do, but if there's something that I'm like, oh, I had this scheduled for the day and I'm just not feeling it, like listening to yourself, listening to your body, listening to what you're called to is the most important form of self-care. Like that's most important, because that's like what yourself is wanting. So taking what you need, even if that's not doing what was scheduled, is the most important.
Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of, you don't want to, when you're seeing other people and what theirs looks like, especially in the virtual sense that we're all in, especially for young people in the chronic illness space or disability space, that's how you interact with so many people, is virtually, is just realizing that you can kind of celebrate your own success, and it doesn't have to look like everybody else's. That comparative nature of self-care can make yours feel like you're dimming your own of what you're doing, because it doesn't look the way someone else's. And so it should be, if it feels successful to you, then that's what matters, versus if it looks successful. Because a lot of times if you set up the room and you do the thing, then you go, oh, that didn't really do anything for me. It looks nice, but it does nothing for me. And so being able to feel that it is working is better than it looking like it's working.
Of course. And like, if you have fun, like if it, like sometimes self-care feels like creating like creative things and setting a space up like in a certain way, but it doesn't have to, like, it doesn't have, like, it should be I mean, realistic self-care is the best self-care because it's what really is working for you. So yeah, and I always say, like, if you're following those accounts or they're coming up on your explore page, you can actually there's an option to like, don't show me this on my page anymore, even if you're not following people. Like, you can opt out of those things at any time and set that boundary for yourself. Like, there's so many people that I've like muted or unfollowed, and it's like, they're great people. They're just not like helping me feel like my best. So like, and that's, you know, an individual feeling that like is brought up for me. And, you know, giving yourself permission to like, not like kind of giving yourself that space so that you don't feel like you have to compare as much either. Because it really is, and being proud of like what I just did made me feel so good. And yeah, maybe that made her feel good. Maybe it didn't, but what matters is that what I just did, I'm really proud of.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good way to end that. And I know what we're doing differently on this season is we're ending every episode getting to know our guests. So you are able to get to know the woman behind all of the tips, trips, and advice from the episode. So we're going to have Morgan give herself, we're obviously talking about proud moments. We're going to have Morgan give herself some superlatives of life. We're doing illest superlatives.
Illest superlatives, InvisiYouth.
Illest superlatives is where we are going to have Morgan answer questions on what would be sort of like your high school graduation book superlatives, but, you know, with our fun twist of answers. So, Morgan, what would most likely be the place you would travel to if you had complete freedom to go anywhere?
Bali.
Oh man. That just feels like a whole self-care experience being together there.
This is really wooey, but there's something I'm like really good friends with my personal astrologer, became like one of my best friends, and she taught me something called astrocartography, and it's like where basically whenever like planets line up in certain places for you in the sky, it kind of like gives you different feelings in like different places, and Bali is like one of those places that like lines up really like nicely for me. So now I'm like, it's on my mind to like set that goal for myself to go there. So for now it's fantasy, but if I could go absolutely anywhere, that would definitely be where I would go.
Most likely to find you indulging in what self-care practice on a Friday night?
Probably like face mask and eating ice cream.
Oh, I love that. That's a good combo. I love that. Most likely to have tried this fashion trend?
Bucket hats.
How'd it go?
You know what? I think that they're really cool. I don't know if I look cool in them, but
I love it too. I do. I just cover my eyes. I just like the whole vibe.
Perfect.
That's why.
Yeah.
What most likely to share this kind of post on Instagram?
Some sort of like mantra Monday, like positive affirmation type of post.
Oh, I love that. Best guilty pleasure TV show or activity that I do?
I really love like reality TV, so probably like The Bachelor.
Okay, get it. We know at InvisiYouth we love that franchise as well, so I thoroughly concur on that one. Most recent moment that I randomly laughed?
I was just with one of my best friends this past weekend, and we were laughing really hard because she was wearing her sunglasses like on her like jeans. Like we took a picture and it was like, instead of like here, she had like looking back at it, and for some reason it was just so funny because it was just like a very random thing and we were just like cracking up over it. So there's just so many like funny candid photos, and we were just like zooming in like, what was this? First thing that popped in my mind.
3 words to describe my style of self-care.
Attainable, relaxing, and cathartic.
Oh, I like cathartic. That's a good one. And best piece of advice I've ever been given.
I would say, so I grew up with a mom that was always like very into wellness, and I really did get from her the idea of, you can't pour from an empty cup, and taking those few minutes from yourself so that you do show up better for others, and then acknowledging like once you've taken that time, how like you do have more energy and you do have more of like kind of that upbeat energy to show up in whatever place that you are. So I have to thank my mom for kind of being the example of that my whole life. She's like my best friend. But yeah, I think just, you know, obviously that's kind of the whole theme of this episode. So I wanted to give her that shout out.
Oh, I love that. And as someone who's also besties with their mom, I love that. Don't pour from an empty cup. I really appreciate that. Morgan, I had so much fun on this episode getting to chat with you. And I know all of our listeners and viewers probably thoroughly enjoyed themselves and felt relaxed for the hour getting to listen to us chatting about self-care. This episode might have been an hour of self-care for them. You never know. Podcasting might be for some people. So we might have just provided an hour of self-care for someone. We don't even know. So for people who want to be able to connect with you and your work, where can our listeners and viewers find you on social media?
So I am at Bun _Undone on Instagram, at Self-Care Society _ also on Instagram. And then the new platform, which is basically going to be like an online community forum for self-care, is going to be Bun Undone sesapp.com. And that launches actually on February 4th. Yes, February 4th. And then bunundone.com is the blog. bunundoneses.com is where all the Self-Care Society things are. So I know that's like multiple different links, but you could really all find them in one place or at the link on my bio as well. All events are open to anyone, anytime. So would love to connect with anyone and answer any questions too.
Absolutely. And all of Morgan's links are going to be below in the description notes, so you can check those out there. And as always, you can follow InvisiYouth on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at InvisiYouth. And you can subscribe to the InvisiYouth chat sessions to watch our YouTube visual show or on our YouTube channel, or listen to the audio podcast platform on where any audio podcast platform is available, like Spotify, Apple, and Google, and all the others that are available. We appreciate all the subscribers and new listeners and downloads that we have. So thank you again, Morgan, for being on our first episode of season 4. I've loved having you on, and for everybody listening and watching, I will see you guys soon. Bye.